can sound that's pretty free spinning. Doesn't really give off a whole lot of noise. That little clacking you're hearing is probably side-to-side movement and is probably nicking one of the bushings. Now, I like to try to keep this gear as low-lying in the gearbox as I can because I base all my other shimming around it. So let's say, I put, 3 shims on here and I made it sit really high. That means these 2 other gears are also going to have to sit even higher, which means you'll run out of room on the top of the gearbox really quick. So this is decent, but I'm going to test it one more way. Because I really like the sound of that when it's not hitting any metal. And I'm going to see if that clacking you hear is from it hitting other things in its side-to-side movement. And for some reason, I just cannot get this thing to sit in the bearings today. Nor can I pick up shims, apparently. Get a little grease on my finger. Man, that usually works. This one's just being really irritating. There we go. Now don't drop it, right? Restart the process all over again. There we go. So if this is true in my thought process here, and that this is side-to-side movement like I think it is, putting this other gearbox shell should help stop that almost entirely, because now it doesn't have the room to move side to side. Grab a little tool, Allen key, screwdriver, whatever it may be, and you could actually just free. Okay, so it's not side to side movement, which means that this needs to be raised up a little bit more. And I'm going to say that it's pretty dang close. So I'm going to put a really thin 01 shim or something close to it, because I don't have these labeled. I just kind of look at it and tell by eye, because I've been doing it a while. I don't base my thought process off of numbers. Now that's much better. It's almost silent, which is beautiful. Alright, so now what I do is when I get that free spinning, sounding good, I'm going to put the top shell on. Now what I'm going to do, I'm not even going to bother spinning it, is I'm going to check how much play there is top to bottom in the gearbox to see if I need to throw more shims up top, if I need to change how many shims I have on bottom, because maybe it's too tight now and it's not going to want to spin, it's going to make a lot more noise, it's going to be really unhappy. But I'm not sure if you guys can see in there, probably not very well, but I can actually openly see in there and see how much room I have, which, to be honest, isn't a whole lot. Another way to test this is you do this and you push the bottom, I'm trying to think of the name of that, it's not coming to me, but the bottom of the gear, you can actually push it up manually and see how much room you have. Which it looks like I have about 2 millimeters of play or so, which is what they recommend for running bearings rather than bushings. If you're running bearings, you want to keep your gear a little bit more loose to keep pressure off of your bearings so they don't break open and destroy your gun. But with me not screwing my gearbox shell in, I don't really know what that is going to be like when I screw it all in. So what I'd like to do, especially with bearings, I'll run it, about 3.03 millimeters or 3 millimeters or so. I don't remember what it is. I'd do it by eye, but I do it so that it has a little bit, quite a bit of room, so that when I screw it down, it'll be, about where I want it when it's all said and done. But I mean, that is virtually silent, and it's spinning pretty well, so I don't think there's a whole lot of friction there. So I'm not going to put a shim on the top. Once I screw it in, it'll be even tighter. So I don't think there is a need there. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this off to the side and make sure I don't lose these shims, because I will not remember. Yeah, one already fell off. These things are going to be troublesome, huh? You'll see, there's a trick I do when I grease the gearbox when I'm all done, ready to put the gun back together. That'll keep your shims from falling off your gears. You really just put a little bit of grease right on the, I gotta think of what these are called. Guess you could call them axes. Your little feet here, the foot of the gear. It'll keep your shims in place pretty well. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shim the bevel gear. So when I do next, after I shim the spur gear, my process changes a little bit. So I will shim this freestanding in the shell like I did the spur gear. However, when I'm happy with this gear and I get it free spinning and sounding alright, what I'll do is I'll then put the spur gear back in place, and I'm going to check gear to gear shimming. And you want about, 1.5 mm to 2 millimeters, if that, of space between your teeth and the top and bottoms of the gears. Just about. This one spins pretty okay, so I'm going to throw a thin shim on there just to see if I can get some of that sound to go away. And these guys just really aren't holding on today at all. It's actually a little bit thicker than what I'd like, but I'm going to give it a shot anyways. It's probably as good as that's going to sound. Given that there ain't really a whole lot of metal for this thing to contact anyhow, I'm not too worried about it. So now what I'm going to do is simultaneously put the spur gear back in there. Put this one with its shim back in place. Now you guys aren't going to be able to see this, but I will either lift it or duck down. Probably ducking is probably my best bet, to get to eye level to see how much space this actually has, which isn't a whole lot. I could see a little bit of light, but I'm going to throw a really thin shim on the bottom just to give it some extra room. So I'd rather play a little bit on the safe side rather than not so much on the safe side. Now I can very clearly visually see that there's a decent gap there. The clacking is from it moving side to side when I hit it, but when it's free spinning, it doesn't really make a whole lot of noise, which is perfect. However, with that now the depth set perfect on the bottom where I want it, I'm going to take this gear back out, make sure the shims are back on the gear so you don't lose them. Put this back in here. Now I'm going to check how it sits against the top of the gearbox. I can tell you I'm a little worried. I feel like it's going to be a little bit on the tight side, which isn't ideal. Which actually it's not. Some gearboxes are very different. So some of them are wicked tight for no reason. Other ones are wicked loose for no reason. This one seems to be having a good balance here. Even with the extra shims that I threw on the bottom, I have plenty of movement on the top. Like there's probably about an 0.4 shim, so 0.04 millimeters or 0.4 millimeters of movement there in shim depth. So what I could do is I could throw a thin shim on top, or I could leave it. and let this and the motor have a little bit of talking room. So if the motor's not necessarily happy with where the gear is, it could move it a little bit. Won't be able to move it much, but it'll move it a little bit. So I think I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it. We'll see what happens, but I'm gonna go with my gut on this one. It is a fair bit of movement, but I think I'd rather, if anything, I'd rather have that gear a little bit loose than a little bit tight, in my opinion. And that's fine. You know, I'm not running an HPA system, so my gun's not going to be quiet anyways. You know, I like my guns to sound healthy, so they're not screechy or grindy or anything, but they're never going to be completely quiet. And I'm okay with that. That I accept. So this one, I'm going to kind of rough shim it. This is the sector gear, the interactor with the piston here. I'm going to shim it to what I think it'll like with the spur gear. So I use, you know, a thicker and then a thinner on the spur gear. I'm going to do the same thing here, and even probably throw, you know, I might go a thick and a medium to give it a little bit extra height there, so it's not spinning on top of the spur gear. So if you ever see spiraling on your spur gear, and there goes a shim, it's because your sector gear, I believe, is probably sitting on your spur and grinding it to all hell. Very clear. I think I have a gear with spiraling somewhere that I got out of a basic out-of-the-box gun. It doesn't, to my opinion, damage anything, because it's not actually damaging the teeth, but it does cause undue friction, and will make your gun have to work extra hard to spin those gears. And I can't grab any of these today. This is terrible. I'm just gonna grab, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 of these of varying amounts of width or thickness, because it doesn't really matter to me. This one's a thicker one. It's a thinner one. Move that off to the side. Looks like we got an even thicker one. So I'm gonna go 2 thickers, and I'm gonna see what happens. That's fairly decent. Now I gotta put both of these back on here, and hopefully I don't lose them. Come on, you son of a. I'm so used to using greasy shims that they just stick to your finger, because they have a little bit of grease on them. Alright, now I'm going to do the same thing I did with the other gear, right? Put it in place, hopefully not losing the shims. Alright, so she's in place now. Doesn't sound too bad, believe it or not. Getting a little bit of clackety clacking, which probably means a little bit on the tight side, which it is. So what I'm gonna do here, it's close, super close. It's almost right where I want it. So I'm gonna take and I'm gonna put a really thin shim. That one's perfect, right there. It's pretty much what I do. I'll get it to where it's almost perfect, exactly how I want it, exactly how it should be, and I'll throw an extra 0.1 millimeter on there, just to make sure that it's extra safe. Now let's see. If I spin it really fast, you're getting some of that clacking. That's from this gear being able to wobble side to side so much. But as I said with the other one, we'll put the top on, give it a spin, and we'll see how it sounds. You know, in this one, you can stick your finger right in here and spin it. I guess I got a little, I don't have chubby fingers, but that window's a little too tight for me. So I can spin it right down here. Now the actual spinning of this gear is pretty quiet, other than me clacking and hitting things with my big chunky finger. It's actually pretty good. Now I'm gonna go ahead and, woo, we got plenty of room up top. so much room, so I'm actually going to throw a shim on there, probably like an 02. So not super thick, but not super thin either. Take a look at that one. That one's a little bit on the thinner side, but since it's right here and I don't have to go digging for it, I'll put it on there and see what happens. Still a little bit too much movement, so that thin shim, as I thought, wasn't going to do the job. Need a little bit thicker. That one right there. Pull you off to the side so I can isolate you. It's much easier to do this with like a flathead or something, but I'm very happy with the sound of that. It's very quiet. So I'm not really gonna stress out about it too much. I think that's a job well done, shim. Anyhow, shim job, pretty done. We consider it ready to go. That these gears can now be dropped into place and cycled confidently. I want to check one more thing with that sector gear though. As I mentioned before, with your piston, I'm actually going to put the whole assembly in there real quick. Get the gear in first, I guess. Make sure I don't lose any shims. Might even grease these up a little bit so I stop losing these. Put that in there, get this ready to go. I should make sure that that port's actually porting and doing its job. So, two things when you're testing these two things, right? So I've got my shim sector gear and I've got my full compression set for the most part. There's two things you want to test. You want to go check the angle of engagement, AOE, and then you want to check the depth at which your gear is making contact with the other, which this one in particular is pretty high up. It's just hitting the top end, which is not ideal, but I'm going to leave it because I'm very happy and very confident with the way these gears are shimmed, that I'll like the end result. You know, maybe if I got to replace a piston at the end of the day, I'll replace a piston. It's not a big deal. But this is also might be sitting a little bit up like that, so it might actually be hitting perfectly. But you can't tell until the whole thing is together and under pressure. But as for that, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Right now it's hitting high. However, if I were to move the piston, you know, a little bit more upright, it's within a decent margin of contact, so I'm not too worried about it. As for AOE, you want to have your piston all the way forward, and you're going to rotate your gear until you make first contact, which happens to be right about there, which is not what people on the internet would say ideal. You know, they want kind of like right about there. That's what they say, about 12 o'clock. I even like to do mine a little bit more towards like 12:30 to 1 o'clock, so a little bit more, you know, like right there. And that's what you use a spacer for, to do that. Spacer on the piston head right here, to do that. This one, I guess I never did. Maybe I didn't see a reason to. It's not actually bad for the most part. This engagement angle right here, since I'm not doing anything crazy with this build, isn't worrying me, because as I could see, that tooth and that gear is getting full contact together. You know, maybe it was more forward, like right here, I'd be definitely concerned. But at the point that this is hitting there, they both have full contact. So I can, you know, reliably say that that's going to pick up that piston every time, you know, and it's going to turn. But let's say it wasn't. I had to fix it, right? So let's say that I was getting really bad engagement on my gears here, which I'm not. But let's say it was like way forward or whatever, you know, it's picking up over here. So you do your correction and you set it, you know, about there, so it's perfect. You know, you get the perfect engagement. Ideal. A thing to worry about, if you don't have a piston with teeth removed, let's see if I have one to show you. Yeah, here's one right here. So let's say you have a full tooth piston, right? This one happens to have the back shaved down, which most are factory shaved nowadays. The thing you got to worry about, right? So you got your gear coming around to pick it up. Could use this gear here, but I don't want to lose the shims. Let's use this really old, nasty looking gear, right? So you're coming, you're gonna, you know, you've set it so now it's 12 o'clock, right about where you want it. Alright, well, battery died. Other than that, my GoPro was getting wicked hot. Like, almost like burned me hot. Concerning, to say the least. But anyhow, that is neither here nor there. Let's get back on the topic. So, when my battery died, I was talking about PME and things to watch out for, things to do. So, I was at the point where you've spaced your piston, you got your perfect angle right here, your you know, your 1215, 1230 type of angle for me personally. Thing to look out for is, let's say, you know, you have your full rack piston over here. This one isn't a full rack, so I can't really show you unless I swap out, which I'm too lazy to do. But the thing to watch out for these is that now that you're setting the piston further back in the system here, when your gear comes up to full rotation, so when your gear comes to grab this, right, so let's say it's over here now, comes to grab this piston, these teeth right here, the first tooth, the pickup tooth on your sector gear, will hit those other teeth that are in the way. So these last probably tooth and a half right here. These two will now hit against this sector tooth. So you have to go in there and you got to shave them off. You got to completely get rid of them, or half them. I usually buy them pre-done so I don't have to do it myself because I'm lazy and it comes out messy and not clean. But I will buy them with the last tooth right here, this one that's halved on this piston, completely gone, and then this other tooth in front of it shaved down to half. And with that, I think they're called 14.5 tooth pistons. With those, I never really have an issue. I never have to cut anything, take out a power tool, shave it, take out a hand grinder, none of that malarkey. Just buy them pre-done, it's easier. Might be hard to find them, so, and even when you do, I bought some and they gave me full tooth rather than 14.5, so I have to do it anyhow. Whatever, bummer, not a big deal. But this actually ain't too bad. I'm not gonna bother trying to fix it, do anything with it. I'm happy with it. You know, if this was a little bit more of a high pressure build, you know, higher rate of fire, you know, like with a really good motor, high trigger response type of deal, yeah, I'd be a little bit more concerned about it, but it's not really a big deal to me. I'm not going to worry about it too much. However, I will check and make sure that my port is in the right place, of all things. Good thing I checked, because it's definitely not. Which is gonna be a little bit of a annoying thing to try to fix. Gotta move it even more. There we go. Sometimes it's different. With the other cylinder head, it was a little bit different. There we go. Come on now. Alright. So, with that being done, we have now essentially done all of the mechanical work itself. We have the gears shimmed, the compressions tuned, all the rest of the stuff just kind of just fits in, just pops in and goes. So, we're now on to probably what some people might consider the easiest or the hardest part, depending on where you come from, how you like MOSFETs. We gotta install a Titan. We gotta run the wires, gotta get the stickers set up. All that mumbo jumbo. Well, Swiss Army knife multi-tool. Super useful. If I could actually cut it. Should have just done that to begin with. Much easier. Scarred the box, but oh well, the box is going to get thrown away eventually anyways. So, here we go. V3 gate Titan. I buy the basic version rather than the advanced, because I don't think the advanced is really necessary. I think you're just paying extra $50 for a bunch of stuff that's not important, when that money could go into pretty much all of your inner mechanical pieces, you know what I mean? Guide, which I don't really need. I already know how to do most of the stuff. Might take a peek though. Instructions are always handy to have. I'm gonna go see if this comes with a screw. It might. Some of them do, some of them don't. I can't remember which was which. Comes with a sticker though. That's cool. That's right, backlash stickers. I gotta deal with all that. Trigger stickers, selector stickers, spare connector set, handy to have. Not that I ever need them. Motors maybe, but not the Deans. Washers for your screw, I believe. Or maybe for the trigger, actually. Might be washers for the trigger. I've never used them, so I'm not gonna start. Let's do the first thing. The first thing that I'll always do is trigger backlash, which is just something to keep everything kind of nice and tight and orderly, so that you don't get a bunch of different readings. The backlash sticker goes in, if you've never ever seen a V3 trigger shuttle system, you have your trigger and you have your shuttle, which then hits the contact piece that makes the gun go burp. So the backlash is this bit right here, which is the piece that other piece rotates on. And pretty much you're just putting some silicone rubber adhesive, I don't know what it is, in there to essentially reduce movement, is the whole idea of that. It can be a pain. Sometimes I don't stick because these cast aluminum parts are not sticker friendly, in my experience. Same thing with the trigger stickers. Real pain. Which the trigger sticker actually goes like right here, which I might actually need to clean that up. We'll see. I'm going to do the backlash first, and I think I'm going to go 0.3, 0.5. Let's take a peek here. What do we got? It's pretty movable. I'm going to start out with a 0.3, I think. The medium width backlash. I'll let you know. You'll immediately know if it's too tight. If you put too much of a thick backlash on there, you will know it immediately. It's pretty easy to figure out. If I could get the sticker off, that is. Now, once I get it in there, which you probably can't see, you might be able to see the shine of it, but once I get it in there, I like to take one of my little Allen keys, right? And I'll kind of, this is how I set the adhesive. I just kind of put pressure on it, run it back and forth. Sometimes I'll like to slide, but as I said, they don't like to stick very much anyways. That's not a good sign if she just falls right off. Still a little bit too much room. So what I'm going to do is, now I'm not the best at doing these backlashes. I got an AK in a swap meet once, and the guy had put a Titan inside of it. And I don't know what he did for his trigger backlash, but it was crisp. It was so nice. So good. Nice and tight. Come on. Come on. I've never been able to replicate that, sadly. I wish I could. But I'm also not one to get, you know, too crazy about it either. As long as the gun works and functions, you know, roughly as it was designed to, how I want it to, it's good enough for me. I'm not super finicky here when it comes to getting the best parts and everything all like that. Really just go out and play the game, as long as my weapon functions competitively in the scope of things. That's all I could wish for. Still got a bunch of movement. Kind of crazy, actually. I usually don't see ones that need this many patches, or stickers, I should say. Usually, the ones that I've done aren't nearly as bad. Usually like a 0.3, and maybe one of the thinner ones is really all I'd ever need. I don't usually put more than 3 stickers on here. There's a solid wad of like silicone right there now. A good old, I don't know, millimeter almost. Ah, see, there we go. That is when you know you're almost too tight. Now I'm going to see if I can actually get it on there. Doesn't look like I'll be able to. Which means that last one I put on has to come off, and I think a 0.15, one of these really thin ones, will do it just right. Now the question is, can I actually get that other layer I put on off? That is the question. I'll tell you what, these things really do stick well to each other, if anything at all. They might not stick well to the aluminum, but they do stick to each other very well. That was a little bit of a pain to try to get off. Also, if you guys hear an audio difference between when my battery died and where it's at now, I took I have a scuba tent, what's the name of it? The GoPro shell, the scuba shell, and that's what I had it in. That's what I was using, and I think that's the reason why it got really hot, which would be, yes, that's why the reason it got really hot. I just felt the GoPro, and it's warm, but not hot. Which is really weird to me that they design a case like that, and then when the GoPro is running at normal temperatures, on a relatively, you know, probably 60, 70 degree room that it gets that hot. And that's the way I was going to run it out in the field for gameplays, which has me, you know, rethinking some things here about maybe that's not such a good idea because I don't want it to overheat and fry itself. And I cannot get this adhesive strip of paper. Oh, there we go. Got it. For you techs out there, if anyone ever asks why you keep nails on your fingers as a male, this is why. Trying to get tiny little things to work, you need nails. To pick things up shimmed, especially these little adhesive strips. It's a real pain if you ain't got nails. I'll tell you that right now. There we go. That is nice. It's really stiff, but once broken in, that should work fine. Now, I'm going to take a look at the booklet because I got to remember where the trigger sticker actually goes, which should be on that front face of that shuttle system there. Yep. Which it might not like doing because the cast part is actually not totally nice and flat like it should be. But we'll see. Oh, these are selector stickers. Oops, wrong bag. Now, on an average installation, you're probably going to go through about 3 of these. Trust me. I do every time. I've yet to find one that sticks the first time, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm thinking that little ridge right there is going to be a big problem. So what I'm going to do, break out my power tool and get rid of it. I got rid of some of it. I think I have a metal file somewhere. I'm gonna go through, grab the metal file, and I'm gonna finish cleaning it up because it's a little rough right now. Can't exactly get in there with the particular attachment I had on that. Where is my file?